Hey, everybody, welcome in. This is Sports and Money Pro Football GM. I am Simon Shortt. I'm here with your Steelers segment. First off, just want to say shout out to Ben Parker. Thank you so much for letting me hop on your channel. We'll see how long we get to do this for before he runs us out. But until then, be sure to check me out at least once a week on this channel. I'm going to come to you over the off season, talking about the Steelers. We'll kind of break down what they're doing through the slow part of the off season before getting ready for the 2022-2023 regular season, the first without Big Ben Roethlisberger. Should be a lot of fun, should be a really interesting year. Obviously, we're winding down now. The draft is less than 2 weeks away. Today is Saturday, April 16th. I'm losing track of the days already, but Saturday, April 16th, we have less than 2 weeks before the big day. That'll be round one, first round. Draft pick for the Steelers of this new era. And all the talk, all the buzz is about, is it going to be one of these quarterbacks? So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. It's the quarterback conundrum when it comes to the draft in general and the Pittsburgh Steelers this season in the first year post Big Ben. So to start off, unfortunately, this was the wrong year to be looking for the next franchise quarterback if you're any team in the NFL. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are certainly one of those teams. This is probably the weakest quarterback class that we've seen since 2013, when the only first-round quarterback taken was E.J. Manuel. EJ was fine. He did okay for a couple of years there, but obviously didn't last long coming into Buffalo. And that just kind of, showed with a whimper what that 2013 draft class was about. And this is probably the worst one since then. For me, if you've been following along with other stuff I do, I'm very honest. I'm not a huge college football guy. I don't usually really start paying attention until the new year comes around and we get close to bowl games and playoffs and draft season, stuff like that. And then I hop on the analysis and start paying attention. But one thing I do know is if you don't know a quarterback's name that's supposed to be a first round pick really until, the postseason, that's not a good sign for college football and the quarterbacks that are in there. The only quarterback that I really knew about coming into this year was actually Sam Howell of UNC. He had a great 2020 season. He had a lot of NFL talent around him at skill positions. And when that season ended, it was kind of, hey, he's staying. He's probably going to be the best quarterback in the class. Well, he had a disappointing year in 2021. He had a lot less NFL talent around him, and his production really dropped off. And now he's kind of stuck in the third, fourth, or even maybe fifth quarterback in this class when, again, these other 4 or 5 names that we're going to talk about real quick didn't really gain a lot of prominence in terms of NFL draft discussion until late this season. So that's really not a good sign. There's obviously a lot of quarterbacks already for next year. Like I already know Bryce Young. I already know CJ Stroud. I don't know all their names off the top of my head, but those are the two that's kind of the Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields from last year going into next year. And then there's some guys that, there's a Boston College guy, there's a Miami guy. There are other names out there that people are kind of already talking about and seeing. Whereas this time last year, Malik Willis wasn't on my radar. Desmond Ritter wasn't really on my radar. Kenny Pickett, not on my radar. So that's kind of the first place and the first sign to me that says this maybe isn't the year you want to draft a quarterback. Now, from there, obviously getting into the film, getting into the analysis from different people we're seeing, again, not the year. Nobody's really, really excited. I think the top quarterback in this class, you have to say, is Malik Willis, just because he has the best traits overall. And if you can clean up his downfalls in terms of decision-making, reading a defense, accuracy, not taking sacks, there's a really, really good player in there, but that's a lot of stuff to clean up. So you have to be sure you can do that when you select him. After that, it kind of falls off. Desmond Ritter, I really like. I think he has the best combination of traits at 6'4". He ran a good 40. He has athleticism, plus the most pro-style offense, maybe other than Kenny Pickett, of these 5 quarterbacks that are supposed to go first round, early second round. And I just think you can build off of that because he has those traits in that athleticism where he didn't really use them in college. Maybe that was by design. So maybe if now in the NFL, teams are telling him, hey, go ahead and use your speed. Maybe he'll do it a little bit more. From there, the other three guys, Sam Howell, I think, has the best arm talent. I think he can make all the throws, and it'll just be about, can he hang in the pocket and read NFL defenses within his NFL offense enough to make the throws happen? But I think he has the best arm talent of those five, perhaps, when it comes to deep ball accuracy, throwing outside the numbers, and making all the short and intermediate throws as well. Matt Corral is interesting. My biggest issue with him is he ran exclusively an RPO system in college. Now, RPO is really heavy in the NFL as well, but you want your quarterback to be able to do more. He has a live arm. He's a good runner. I think he could make all the throws, but again, it's just that, can he sit in a pro style offense and make the plays you would expect? And then Kenny Pickett, I think, is the quote unquote safest option, but I think that also just means that by year two, these other guys could outpace him because we know who he is. My big red flag with Kenny Pickett is he didn't really have a standout college season until he was a fifth year senior at 23, throwing against, 19, 20-year-olds in the ACC. Also not usually a good sign if you're a grown man and you don't really stand out until you're playing amongst young men. So that's where I'm at on these college quarterbacks. What I mainly want to talk about is the quarterback position in general is just really, really dicey to try and get to. So let me pull up a couple things for you guys here. I've done a couple studies over for phantomsportsofficial.com. You can find these pieces on there. But the first thing I did, I want to take a look at just the history of drafting quarterbacks in round one. So since 2011, these are all the quarterbacks that have gone in round one. 5 in most years, 3, 4, 5. We have the 1 year here, 2013 with EJ Manuel, obviously not a good year. We could talk about each one of these guys, but just to start, I want to pull your attention over to this number. 13 of 32 are guys that I kind of considered to be hits. Either they're still playing or they had a good run. But that's 41%. We know that first round picks in the NFL really only have a 50-50 chance of being productive NFL starters. And that's really what you're looking for as a first round pick. If you're looking for a quarterback in the first round, obviously you're looking for this guy to lead your franchise. And the numbers show that it's very unlikely you're going to find the right guy. Also, this 13 out of 32, I did not include last year's rookies in that. I truly believe you don't really know a quarterback until a second full year starting. So even some of these other guys in here, actually it might be some second round picks, but obviously like Jordan Love, we don't know. He hasn't had a full year of being a starter yet. Tua has like 1.5 years, but I think we know where he's at, and everybody else has a strong enough sample size that we know. So obviously when you're talking about a 40% hit rate on quarterbacks, that's not great. And when it comes to the quarterbacks in this year's draft, you could say, oh, a lot of them have second round grades on them. Maybe they'll be in the second round. We know that won't happen though. Look at the names that are on this list. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky, who funnily enough, we'll talk about for the Steelers at some point. Josh Rosen, although he kind of came into his college season that year, expected to be a high pick, but Paxton Lynch, Johnny Manziel was a borderline second round pick. Again, EJ Manuel, Brandon Whedon, who I think was like 45 years old when he got drafted, Blaine Gabbert, Christian Ponder. These guys, should not have been first round picks in the first place. But the nature of the NFL and the nature of the quarterback position means that we're going to talk ourselves into these guys every year. So in January here at the beginning of draft season, there was maybe one quarterback, and that was Kenny Pickett, that was thought to be a first round pick. And everybody else was kind of, Ritter, Howell, Corral were all kind of limited upside guys that we viewed as. In Howell and Corral's case, they play a lot of RPO. It's really hard to know how they'll translate to the NFL. Ritter, it was, not the most accurate player and doesn't use his athleticism in a dynamic way. Whereas Kenny Pickett had a really dynamic season in this year. So, and he, already shows accuracy. He's good in the red zone. He's good on third down. Other than Ritter, he played the most pro-style offense. So a guy that looks very NFL ready. So he was thought to be a first-round pick right away. Malik Willis was a guy that we always knew was a huge project but had a high upside. but it wasn't really until the Senior Bowl that we really found out just how much his traits outweighed those of his peers. And that was where we started talking ourselves into him as a first round, and then top 10, and then potentially top 5 overall pick. And now we're in April, and Ritter has gained a lot of buzz, which again, I'm for. I like Ritter a lot, but Ritter's gained a lot of buzz. Corral is gaining a lot of buzz. And, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a team now at the back end of the first round that, because of Howell's combination of arm talent and athleticism, he's a good scrambler. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody, or even the Pittsburgh Steelers, talked themselves into Sam Howell. So now we're talking about, we could see 3, maybe 4 quarterbacks go in this first round, when 4 months ago it was like we were talking about 1 quarterback. So this is how we get this 40% number here in terms of success rate for first round quarterbacks being drafted. Now let's talk about Malik Willis and even Kenny Pickett a little more specifically. We know that the Pittsburgh Steelers love Malik Willis. We saw Tomlin and Colbert at his pro day. We know how happy some of those big throws that he made them. Tomlin was all over him at the Senior Bowl, talked to his family and Malik a couple of times. And we know they're looking for a mobile quarterback. We also know that they've put themselves in a position by signing Mitch Trubisky and retaining Mason Rudolph that they don't have to start anybody they draft right away. And Malik Willis is definitely in that camp. He's the kind of guy that would really benefit and really needs to sit for a full year. Here's the problem with Malik Willis. Somebody's taking him in the top 10. If he slips out of the top 10, I'll be genuinely surprised, and not because I find him to be a top 10 talent, but because I know the NFL and NFL GMs are going to be tantalized by his talent, and someone's going to talk him into being a top 10 pick just because they need a quarterback, whether it's the Panthers, the Falcons, the Seahawks, or a team we don't expect to trade up. But if Pittsburgh really wants Malik Willis and they truly believe he's going to be a franchise quarterback, they're going to have to move up to take him. So I also did a study for fandomsportsofficial.com. You can check that out, of quarterbacks that have been traded up for since 2016. So these are players that went in somewhere in the first round, and someone from outside of whatever pick that was had to trade up for him. So just going back here in 2016, for example, here's the first one. Jared Goff was the first overall pick that year. The Rams traded the 15th pick, 2 second rounders, and a third rounder in 2016, and a first and a third rounder in 2017. So in order to swap from 15 to 1, they traded 2 2s, 2 3s, and an additional first. And they got back a 4th and 6th in return. So there's just one example. But I want to bring us down to the most recent example, and the one that is probably the closest to what the Steelers are looking to do. So that would be down here with Justin Fields last year. So Pittsburgh sits at the 20th pick. I think they'll have to get into the top 10 if they want to take Malik Willis. Like I said, right now you got Atlanta at 8, Seattle at 9. The Giants have 7. They probably don't need a quarterback this year. So therefore they may be interested in trading that 7th pick. Actually, I believe it's been reported that they want to move one of their first 2 picks back and get some additional draft capital. So for this pick for Justin Fields last year, the Giants actually, funnily enough, traded the 11th pick, and they went down 9 spots to pick 20, and they picked up a 5th that same year, a 1st the following year, which is this year, 2022, and a 4th that same year as well. I believe there's one, but I mean, if you just look at that, it's going to at least cost next year's first round pick in order to move up. I don't think that should be a surprise. And I think that's well within fair value because if you're saying this is a quarterback we believe in, then that means this is your franchise quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years. That's well worth 2 first round picks. If Malik Willis hits, and I mean, we won't really know that next year anyways when draft time comes around. But if you look back in 5 years and he's been good, you're not really going to miss that additional first round pick. So I think that one's fair. There was another one in here. Josh Allen, Tampa traded back from 7 to 12 and got 2 seconds and sent out another second. Here, Deshaun Watson, his original trade from Cleveland, 12 to Houston, 25, and they picked up an additional first-round pick. Here's another one, Buffalo with Patrick Mahomes, traded the 10th pick for the 27th pick, and they also got an additional first and a third rounder. That's kind of where I'm at. I did two studies here. I'll show you what does it cost to move up for a QB. So I used those stats or those records, I should say. And I found out that, so yeah, I used the Patrick Mahomes, the Deshaun Watson, and the Justin Fields. So I pretty much came to the conclusion that, let's say for this example, this was before the Russell Wilson trade and before the Matt Ryan trade. So this was before the Carson Wentz trade. So when I did this article originally, it was to get ahead of Washington at 11, the Saints, and the Eagles. I wanted to get ahead of those teams. I knew that I would be behind the Panthers, but I firmly believe the Panthers are probably going to take Kenny Pickett just because of that Matt Rule, Kenny Pickett connection and the fact that Pickett can start this year over Darnold, sorry. So I think if they were to get, now let's up this a little bit. I had said Pittsburgh trades their first-round pick, a fourth-round pick, a first and a seventh-round pick. I think that's going to have to go up now because I think they're going to have to at least get to Atlanta at 8 or New York at 7. So let's say a first, a third, a first, and then maybe like a fifth next year as well. And that's the investment that you're making in a guy that's not even going to get his first start, hopefully until 2023. Now, if you go back to earlier when I said, I don't think you really know what you have in a quarterback until after his second year, maybe midway through his second full year as a starter. Now you're making this move today in 2022 with 2022 and 2023 draft capital. And you're not really going to know if this guy pans out until 2024. Now, here's the real conundrum. What this means is you're taking Cam Hayward and his last 3 years of his prime, and you're putting it in Malik Willis's hands. And you're saying we can get Cam Hayward a Super Bowl, or we can get a Super Bowl in Cam Hayward's still time with the Steelers with Malik Willis. You're saying TJ Watt, who just won Defensive Player of the Year, who just went into his just finished his fifth NFL season as an outside linebacker, an edge rusher, guy who's in the trenches a lot. We're going to take him from year 6 to year 9 before we really know what we have in Malik Willis. It's a really, really big investment. This team right now is predicated on the running game and on the defense. Speaking of the running game, Najee Harris, you're going to spend the rest of his rookie contract with Malik Willis on the roster while you determine if he's the right guy. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is which quarterback is it going to be? I just talked a lot about Malik Willis, but we don't know if that's going to be the pick or not because we don't really know what the Steelers are, A, thinking about their 5 quarterbacks, and B, what they're willing to do for them. Part of the Steelers and their whole, when you try to track what they do for draft history, makes it very both easy to figure out what they're thinking, but this year in particular is making it really difficult. We know when it comes to first round picks, Mike Tomlin and or Kevin Colbert need to be at that pro day for that to be a first round pick of the Steelers. That's been the case going back to 2010. Every single year, 2010 to 2021 has included one, if not both of those guys at the pro day. They also take a lot of interest in guys who are at the Senior Bowl. They also take a lot of interest in bringing in players for pre-draft interviews at the facility. It also means a lot to them when guys are, multi-year starters, graduated, stuff like that. That's all of these quarterbacks. All 5 of these first round graded to early second round graded quarterbacks. That's Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Desmond Ritter, Sam Howell, Matt Corral. 4 out of those 5 were at the Senior Bowl. Matt Corral, not a senior, so he wasn't. But I think he might have graduated. I'm not 100% sure. But Mike Tomlin, Kevin Colbert, and a big contingent of Steelers brass were all at all 5 of those pro days. All five of those quarterbacks are getting pre-draft interviews. Kenny Pickett's wasn't reported, but he's a local college player, and they technically don't have to announce those as formal interviews. So we can only assume that he's also on that list being interviewed. So it's going to be really interesting come draft day to see what happens, because if Pittsburgh just sits at 20, and let's say Willis and Pickett are off the board, but let's say Ritter, Corral, and Howell are on the board. And let's say for some reason Pittsburgh actually goes with one of those non-quarterbacks. Then does that mean that those other 3 guys they didn't like at all? They didn't have first-round grades on? Does that mean they only like Malik Willis? All of this due diligence they're doing, looking at all 5 of these guys, could just be because they're comparing all of them to Malik Willis. And at the end of it, they might come out and say, Malik is the only guy we really like, but we're not willing to trade up for him. So if he goes in the top 10, that's fine. We're going to sit at 20. We're going to take the best guy we like. Maybe focus at safety, maybe focus somewhere else on the defense or at receiver, and we'll be happy with that. Let's say 3 quarterbacks go, let's say Corral and Pickett go in the top 10, and let's say Ritter goes to the Saints at one of those picks they have. If the Steelers don't take Howell or Corral, does that mean they would have taken Ritter? We'll never know the answer to that question. There's a chance they sit at 20 and they just pick one of those quarterbacks. Whoever falls to 20, there's a chance they like all those guys enough to say, that's our first round pick. Our plan was we're just going to take a quarterback we like at 20. We believe one of the 5 will be there, and we're good with whoever it is. I don't personally believe that's the way to go, unless they legitimately think all 5 guys could be franchise quarterbacks, which would be kind of insane. Of course, they'll tell us no matter who it is that he was their top guy, but that's just how it goes. So it's really hard with, we follow these clues and we know what this team looks for and what they, need to have invested in terms of time in the offseason to picking someone in the first round, but they've done it with all 5 guys. So do they need to trade up? Do they just sit at 20 and wait for a guy to fall? Do they not have a first round grade on all of these guys? Do they not care about grades and they're just going to take a quarterback? Who knows? We'll have to see what happens. That is everything I have for you guys today. So let me just plug a couple more things here. Here's my Twitter page. Come find me. Follow me on Twitter. I'm always tweeting out Steelers stuff, doing a lot of draft stuff right now. There's my dogs, by the way. I also, just follow sports and a lot of other stuff. So come follow. It's at Simon_Shortt. Shortt has 2 T's. Also come over and listen to my podcast. It's the Simon Shortt Podcast. It's on Apple and Spotify. I kind of bounce around topics. This last episode, for example, it's literally called the Shortest Board because I talk NFL, I talk NBA, I even talk Marvel TV shows. Mostly I'm talking about the NFL and the Steelers, though. Every couple episodes, I just do one just with a focus on that. If you want to continue seeing my Steelers content as we get through the draft and the slow part of the summer, definitely check me out on this YouTube channel. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. My podcast will still be going. My subject, however, will be changing for the summer. If you like hoops or women's basketball specifically, or even more specifically, the WNBA, be sure to come listen to this podcast because that's what I'll be covering on the Simon Shortt Podcast all summer long. And then when the WNBA season ends and the NFL season is getting ready to start back up, the podcast will convert back to Steelers and NFL. So until then, with that, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you again to Ben for having me on here. I'm looking forward to this summer with you guys. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.